What's going on, everyone? Welcome to show number 203 of the ARC Junkies Podcast. In today's episode, I'm talking with David Estrada. David makes high-quality custom leather headbands for hard hats and welding hoods. I first learned about David and his products on Instagram a few months ago. I went ahead and ordered a few set of headbands for some of my welding hoods. During production, David and I got to chatting about how he started making the headbands, as well as the type of work that he does in the industry. David is a union pile driver by day and a leather worker by night. He's got a pretty interesting story about how all this came about, and we'll get right into it right after a quick word from the supporters of the show. Today's episode of the ARC Junkies Podcast is brought to you by Everlast Welders. I get a lot of questions from welders of every skill level looking for a true multi-process machine that's affordable. My all-time favorite multi-process machine for the small business and homeowner is the Everlast Lightning MTS 255 and the MTS 275. This machine does it all. It's dual voltage, you can run stick, MIG, TIG, flux core. It's aluminum MIG compatible, and the AC and DC TIG has high frequency, and you can also run an external water cooler. This machine welds like a dream in all processes, and it also has a power set feature to help you get dialed in a hurry. Now you can weld every process with just one machine, saving you space, time, and money. Check out the MTS machines at everlastwelders.com today, and be sure to get that free Nova foot pedal and TIG torch when you buy any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal by typing ARC Junkies in the comment section at checkout. Everlast Welders. Weld mean, weld green. We're also brought to you by Rockmount Research and Alloys. You can check them out at rockmountwelding.com. And if you're not familiar with Rockmount, check out episode 149 of the podcast, where I chat with Pat Adams, who's a wealth of knowledge on maintenance welding. Rockmount makes electrodes and wires for the real world. After the equipment has left the manufacturer and installed in a factory, or the machine breaks down, Rockmount has the electrodes to keep you back up and running. We all know that downtime costs more than maintenance, so get the job done right the first time with Rockmount Welding. For more information on their products, head on over to rockmountwelding.com or click on the link in the show notes. And don't forget, you can now buy Rockmount rods and wires right through MSC Direct and get free shipping right to your front door. Rockmount designs electrodes to weld stronger and last longer. We're also brought to you by Outlaw Leather, makers of high-quality custom welding hoods. I remember my first Outlaw welding hood. I got it back in 2016 as a gift from my students. Outlaw hoods were still pretty new at the time, and personally it's my favorite hood. Not just for the sentimental reasons, but for the durability, comfort, and quality. I'm still running this hood. My Outlaw hood is still working today with no signs of giving out. One of the best things about the Outlaw hoods is the service. About a year ago, my hood was looking a little rough due to use. I boxed it up, sent it back down to the fine folks at Outlaw, and they serviced all the leather and had it looking new once again. I love dealing with Outlaw because they treat you like family. Check them out today at outlawleatherusa.com and design your own custom welding hood for yourself or a friend. And what's more, you can use ARC Junkies in the comment section at checkout and get 15% off your order of any custom leather goods to include hoods, armbands, knee pads, and more. We're also brought to you by Lincoln Electric, the welding experts. Lincoln Electric is my go-to for all my heavy welding applications. Their Power Wave machines with the advanced waveforms are designed and built for heavy-duty welding applications. They have a waveform for almost every application in alloy, whether it's STT for open root, pipe, and plate, short circuit for thin gauge material, precision pulse and smart pulse for out-of-position welding, rapid arc or rapid X for production welding, or any of their other advanced waveforms. They've got you covered. One of the coolest things about these advanced process machines is that they're completely upgradable. And unlike other companies with upgradable software, the Lincoln updates are free. That's right. Anytime Lincoln releases a new update, you can download it from the Power Wave Manager site and upload it right into your machine, giving you instant access to the latest and greatest technology. And now, listeners of the ARC Junkies Podcast can save big on welding equipment, gear, and accessories. Just go to store.lincolnelectric.com and use code word ARCJunkies20 to get 20% off all gear and accessories, or you can use ARC Junkies 10 when you buy any Lincoln Electric equipment and get 10% off welding machines and fume extractors now through the end of December. All right, you know what time it is. Fire up your machine, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
You're listening to the ARC Junkies Podcast. Helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
All right, so David, you're working with the Pile Drivers Union out there in California. How did you stumble into that line of work?
Well, I first started off as a rod buster. It's a rod busters, working with reinforcing steel, and I kind of was sponsored into that union. I had been practicing welding for 4 months, 5 days a week at work during the day, and then I'd go practice at night. I got sent out to my first job site, which was the Oakland Bay Bridge. And that was doing retrofit work inside of all the columns. But before that, the guy who was teaching me how to weld and hold a nozzle, how to prep, how to turn the dials on the machine, he was watching me weld and said, after 4 months, he says, all right, you're ready to test. So I got shipped up north from where I'm at to about 500 miles or so, and took my 3G, 4G on the actual pier of the Bay Bridge. I don't remember. I think it was the second pier. That was 1999. And a couple years went by. I was still so young. I wasn't trying to stay so busy. I was still learning the trade. I was still with the ironworkers. I was working structural. And I got hurt. And I had a couple years off, couldn't really walk right. And I just kind of let go of welding for a minute. I was trying to recuperate, trying to rehabilitate, and I kept getting calls about these big piles need to be welded. 4-foot diameter pile by Magic Mountain out here in Southern California, 8-foot diameter pile in Oxnard, California, and they're like, we want you to help us out. And so I got affiliated with the Pile Drivers in 2001. It was Local 2375 back then, and that's where I started with them.
Okay. Now, how did you get into doing iron work?
Well, it was I can't really put my finger or pinpoint the exact moment in time. It was a poured structure. The crane was tied up, landing forms on the top deck. Foreman says, if you guys want to work today, you can use a dolly and push the tubes throughout the building using the man lift, and if not, then you can wait till the crane's ready, and that might be next week. And so, being 22, 23 years old, being gung-ho was like, yeah, I'm going to work.
We'll just carry it.
Yeah, we'll just move it, and I just remember throughout that day, it didn't feel too bad. As soon as I was walking to the truck, my back felt like kind of weird. And that weekend I didn't recuperate right from that. And so that turned into a problem. I didn't know anything about, if something feels weird right away, you're at work, you should tell somebody right away. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I couldn't really pinpoint the exact moment something happened. That turned into a weekend of I couldn't get up out of the bed, and then it turned into something where 2 years went by.
Damn.
Yeah. And it was just a fiasco. So, yeah, that's something that I had to live and learn through. And to this day, it's, my back still hurts. And you have to learn how to live with certain pain every day,
Yeah. And I think that's like the mentality of like the young bucks that are out there, and I had, when I came up through iron work and stuff like that, getting out in the field, it's like you kind of want to show off and kind of prove to everybody that you belong out there. So you're going to go above and beyond. You're going to push your body to its limits. And, I had old timers come up and be like, hey, man, you stop doing that. Just relax, ask for somebody's help. You're not out here to prove anything. Nobody's going to be impressed with, the fact that you can carry excess amount of material and stuff like that. Like, we have hydraulics on the job site and tuggers and cranes for a reason, so you don't have to pick this stuff up manually. But I was on a mission to show everybody, I'm a badass, I can be an iron worker too. And same thing, man. You can screw yourself up really quick. Don't be afraid to go over there and ask somebody for a hand, or say, hey, I need the forklift for a minute, or, the tugger, or, the crane. And I think definitely. we've all fell prey to that, at a time or two in our experience.
Yeah. Even still, it's you rely on yourself, or just wanting to get it done, or not waiting, or maybe not even trying to impress anybody, but you want to get a job without waiting and somebody catch you standing around, not even trying to. It's always that one moment where you don't intentionally stand around, but you're waiting to get help by a forklift or something. So you try to use a pry bar or something, and then it's all it takes a lot of times.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's important to look out.
Now, you started off as a rod buster, and like when I got into the Ironworkers Union, I didn't realize that was part of our gig. And we're at work one day, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna go bend some rod." And I was like, "Why the hell you want to bend welding rods? Like, just use them to weld with." And they're like, "No, we're gonna go out there and bust some rebar." And I was like, "How the hell are you gonna bust?" Like, I was green as shit, man. I didn't know anything about busting rod, but after a day of that, I was like, "Man, that stuff sucks."
Oh yeah, that's the kind of stuff that'll teach you a lesson. And my brother and I got in at the same time, and he stayed longer with the rod busters. He went through his apprenticeship, and I kind of found myself not trying to do any rods and just sticking with the welding. And what was hard is that with that local, it wasn't a combined local. It was strictly reinforcing.
Oh, okay.
Anything that pertained to us would have been reinforcing welding or reinforcing steel welding. And it's so limited, it's a specialty, so I had to keep looking,
Yeah,
So that's when
our local was kind of a balance between structural steel, rod busting, glazier work, and then architectural and ornamental, because like down here, glass work falls under the ironworkers too. I guess just because the heights and all that stuff too. So you got a lot of people that'll go out there and just install glass panels and window frames and stuff like that up on the high rises.
Oh yeah. That's and it's a tight brotherhood out here in LA. The locals out here, the structural locals, it's a brotherhood all in its own. And I still got some buddies in the trade in iron and structural, but throughout the years since 01 till now, I've made the majority of my acquaintances and longtime friends and brothers with the pile drivers. And it's on the ground most of the time, and I'm glad, because I never did really well up very high, You
don't like the heights?
And I'm not afraid to admit it neither. I can function, but I'd rather try to not to.
Yeah. I'd always like the apprentices that would show up on the job site, be like, "All right, man, let's get up there." We're like, looking at the structure. They're like, "You want me to go up there?" Well, yeah. Well, I can't get up there. I'm afraid of heights. And it's like, do you realize what you just signed on for?
Yeah. It was tough, The last job, it was just always something that you hope that it wasn't your turn to be on the angel wing or on the platform out there. But much respect to those guys. I stay down here on the ground now with the pile drivers, and it's a good local. I can't complain. I've been able to, with the benefits from our trade and everything, raise my kids with benefits, and it's great.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Now with those pylons and stuff, you're talking like 4 foot, 8 foot diameter. Is that like, you got a backing ring on any of that, or is it just like open root, or just slam together butt weld? How's that going in?
Well, it'd be a 90 at the bottom. We'd have a chill ring or a backing ring.
Okay.
And then a 45 on top. And I've done from 16, 18-inch pipe pile. The largest pipe pile that I've welded was at the approach to the Golden Gate for a company called Malcolm Drilling. And those piles were 12-foot diameter, 1 3/4 wall. Damn. And yeah, that was the biggest one that I've done as a part of a team. There was 8 of us, and it was amazing, because we just went up north with my family, not just a couple weekends ago, and just to see the bridges, how immense and huge they are, but to be able to say that some of my work is involved with it, it feels awesome.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, the amount of weld that's actually going into that, on a 12-foot diameter, I mean, that's almost 38 feet of a root weld. And then you've got root, fill, and cap, especially you said, what, 1 1/4 thick?
1.75 inches.
Geez, 1.75 inches. Yes. I mean, that's how many passes you throwing in there?
Shoot, I don't even remember. We were running 0 for 5 dual shield wire, and we had to build a hooch around to try to limit all the breeze coming in. Mm-hmm. Everything was UT tested, ultrasonic tested, but running that wire dual shield is something that we don't really run out here in the field and not, because a gust comes and it's done. Caltrans is super tight with their specs. Caltrans says a gust of wind 5 miles an hour, you can't use it. So that's why we always run with self-shielded wire to flux core. Mm-hmm. But the dual shield is super nice. I mean, we were running 400 inches a minute plus, and just holding on to the trigger and just as far as we could reach and bringing it in here and just going at it all night long.
Yeah. I love gas shielded flux core. It's probably like my favorite process is stick welding and then TIG welding, but there's just something about gas shielded flux core. It's just so smooth and it comes out so clean. I mean, as long as you're dialed in properly, you got the right gas composition, you don't get a gust of wind, but it just runs so smooth. It's like freaking glass when you lay it in there, man. And it just comes out so clean.
That's what we used to say, it's just hot, smooth, and creamy. Yeah. And it just lays right in there, and it feels good, It feels good, and it makes you want to keep going. 1 hour goes by, 2 hours goes by, and then they say break, and you're like, oh man, and get another pass in. But it takes practice to get to a level like that, Mm-hmm. The first time I ever walked up to a 4-foot diameter pipe pile, I was like, man, this is going to take forever to do. And it was just me and another guy. And then, a couple hours go by and we nailed it. And we're like, wow, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
So that's running with flux core and self-shielded wire. And that's what I've run the majority of my career. Since 99, it's been NR 232, 0.072 diameter, Lincoln Electric. It's an E71 T-8 wire, and that's what we run. It's 70-18 in the wire form. For a lot of people that I guess it's, I don't know if it's widely used going back to Central America or Eastern United States, but out here on structural, I mean, that's what we're running.
Yeah, they do a lot of NR 232 and then NR 233 out here, and then Hobart has a version called XLR8, and it's because of the seismic conditions. So I think you guys run it all because of like the earthquakes and everything that you guys have out that way. But we run it a lot here. Like my buddies, they were doing like 3-inch column splices, like 3-inch thick steel I-beam with the ironworkers. They were running a lot of, I believe it was 233 because of the seismic load on the Daytona International Speedway. Right. Just because it's like a heavy cyclical load, all the vibrations from the cars going around. And then they run it a lot out at the Cape for the launch pad because the vibrations and everything like that. So it's meant for like heavy vibratory loads. And then now they're doing the Ultimate I-4 expansion down here on like right through Central Florida, and the pylons that they're driving, they're running. I think they're running 233 5/64ths on all the pylons that they're driving, and that's pretty much what we run at the school. We'll take the students out there when we get into our level 2, which that's where we get into self-shielded and gas-shielded flux core. We'll take them outside and we'll fire up the engine drives, throw an LN25 suitcase on there. Give them some 5/64ths, that NR 233. You don't want to run that shit inside, man. Like as soon as you start hitting it with a chip and hammer or run a wire brush across it, man, the smoke that comes off of that will literally take your breath away. It like locks your lungs up. Like you can't take a breath.
Exactly. It literally chokes you.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. I mean, like I think I put up a post one time, and I just got a lot of comments on it talking about, is that what flux core looks like? And it looks like a lot of people talking trash. Yeah. But it's like, you can only make it look so pretty. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a production wire. It's not as beautiful as like TIG or even MIG. You know, it's just you gotta get in hot and heavy with it and go. But yeah, like you're saying, if you're not wearing a respirator and you touch it, just even with a chipping hammer or a wire brush, it's the particles that they're gonna gag you.
Yeah.
The smoke, if your hood's down and you're outdoors, the smoke will kind of roll off your hood, and you can survive. But sometimes you got to be right up in the smoke, and you can't function without that respirator.
Yeah, I remember we used it a lot when I was going through punk school or apprenticeship program, and like I already tested out on 3G, 4G, 1-inch unlimited with stick, and they're like, all right, next thing you got to do is pass this, and we were running the Hobart XLR8 wire, and that stuff's tricky too, because like if you have your contact tip to work distance off a little bit, or if you get ahead of your puddle. And you could probably speak to it better than I can because you probably ran miles of this shit. But, like, if you get ahead of that puddle, that wire will punch right through. So I did a root, my fill on 1-inch plate. I had all my fill passes in there, and I was getting ready. I think I was on, like, my third cover pass. And, and I got just ahead of the puddle a little bit, and that wire went right through the backside, all the way through the freaking backing strip, and just blew a hole in there, man. And I took that plate down, and, like, I had the booth that was next to the window. Chucked the plate outside, man. I was pissed, and but I mean, it's a finicky wire, and the weld kind of looks like I tell everybody it looks like a slug. It doesn't have like the ripples that you see with like 7018 or 6010 or TIG or MIG or anything. It doesn't have ripples. It's just like a smooth, glossy slug-like appearance. But that's what it's supposed to look like.
Like a smooth sort of bubblegum kind of look,
Yeah,
and that's of course what you want to get when you're, let's say you're doing your root pass. After your root pass, your hot pass, you're at the right temperature and it just kind of lays in real nice. Once you start getting out to your cover passes and you're running the wire, if you don't let your plate cool down, if you're testing and you don't let your plate cool down a little bit, you're going to have where it feels like it spills out, guaranteed. So that's another part about, running wire flux core. If you're testing, even though you feel like you just want to nail it and get it done with, you got to take a little bit of time. Yeah. Of course, not exaggerated, but it takes its own time where you can start laying it in.
Now, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you, like, what are some of the finer details or little tips you can give people that have to run this wire as far as like work angle, contact tip to work distance, travel speed, just things that, because you've run so much of it. What are some of the little nuances that you could, little nuggets of information you could pass off to the people that are either trying to test or doing this stuff out on the job site now?
Well, I've always told people that I've worked with, I can spot somebody who's going to do all right from the moment they start pulling out the lead, from the moment they start stringing out. And something that I tell them is, when you're using a wire feeder, depending on the length of your whip, because they come in a 15, a 15, a 10, and an 8. So you always want to have a straight shot with your whip. No S curve in it, not a ring in your whip. You want to have it nice and straight as possible, and enough to flex where you got to have your motion of weld. You got to check your drive roll tensioning knobs, the spool tensioner knob. Everything's got to be good. That's not overloaded with dust and grit, because all that affects the motion of the feeding in the wire feeder, right? All the dust gets into your liner in the whip, and you'll be welding. You think you're doing okay, and then all of a sudden the tip clogs up, and it's just because of all the wire pushing all the grit through. So after every 2 or 3 rolls, you got to take an air compressor blowgun or turn your oxygen up on your torch lube and blow out the whip. That's something that I always make sure that your whip is straight enough. Yeah.
I was explaining that to a student the other night. I had to fill in for one of my substitutes in night class, and he had his whip for his MIG gun, and he's just doing like pulse spray, but he had it kind of like coiled up in like 3 rings. And I was like, okay, you see that? What's going on there? You've got all this room for friction in there. You want to try to make, if you can't run it straight, you want to have the biggest loop in there, the widest loop that you can inside of that, because what's happening is that set of drive rolls is trying to push that wire through, that whip, and it's creating, abrasions or resistance on the inside. It's building up friction so that, if you have 265 inches of wire feed speed set on your machine, you might not be getting that because of all the resistance that's built up and all the friction that's occurring inside of your lead. And then on top of that, I mean, that's when you're going to start getting all those more metal shavings and stuff built up in there. So you want to try to keep that whip as straight as possible. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And then, a lot of people won't know, so they'll crank down on the little star adjuster, but then that starts to crush, that'll start to crush the wire, and if it's a solid wire, you do want to have some tension on it, but like on a flux core, if you start to crush it too much, it's a little indentation, so it's like rippling through, and you can actually feel it coming out through your tip, and it just leads to problems. So that when I feel that, I know I got to go back to my wire feeder and turn it back a couple dials. But for the most part, when I'm reloading, it's something that I automatically do is check the tensioner on the knob. There's so much preventative maintenance on a wire feeder, and a lot of people are misled to think it's an easier process, welding with wire, but there's so much other things to keep in mind to be productive. When I get a chance to weld with stick, it's relaxing because it's just a stinger. You hook up your ground and you just put in your rod, and you're just, don't worry about the drive rules. Don't worry about nothing. It's relaxing for me, and I love it. And it's time to burn wire. I mean, we're laying it down. I mean, it doesn't stop. My brother and I are used to, on productive days, welding anywhere from, we use these 13-pound coils. We'll go to 3, sometimes 4 coils a day on a productive day, and 75 feet plus of welding, and it's a lot, and then come back and do it again the next day.
So what wire feeder are you using?
We run the LN25.
Okay.
And we try to stick with the older versions, like from 2005 and pre-2005. The pros, they look great, but we've had so much issues with the Pro, the LN25 or the Lincoln LN25 Pro. And it's sad because there is cool features on it, like continuous feed with a switch. I mean, you don't have to be holding the trigger for all these passes. But we haven't had the greatest luck with those. Okay. And it's unfortunate because I want them to work really nice. But yeah, so we try to stick with the older versions of the LN25.
And have you tried the Active 8? Have you tried the Active 8 yet?
Is that made by Miller?
No, it's the Lincoln one, but it's a smaller version. But they're supposed to be like rugged as hell. Like they put a video out, like dropping it down a set of stairs, dragging it out behind a truck, and then I mean, there's this whole big production about them beating the shit out of it, and then they pull up, and then they just hook it right up to the engine drive, and they start welding with it like no problems whatsoever. But it's supposed to be like really durable. But I think you got to put a smaller spool in there. I don't think it'll take like the 25-pound spools.
Right. That wouldn't be a problem. We're used to running like those 13-pound coils most of the time, and I like to use the 25-pound coils because it's less fidgeting around, or when you're going hot and heavy, you don't have to go and reload. But the price per pound of the consumables gets ridiculous, especially with that 232. Yeah. So sometimes we get a better bargain with the different boxes. Okay. Of consumables, but yeah, it's something that you have to make sure everything's legit on your whip, on your nozzle, the tip, the insulator at the top. Everything matters. I myself have some of my nozzles at the end of my whip that I've had for 3 years because Lincoln makes those 12-inch long nozzles, and the reason we use them is, of course, because of productivity. That's been another question I get asked so much is, why do you have such a long nozzle at the end of your whip? And I go, how do you explain that on a little short comment, right? It's like, well, first off, after 5 hours of welding at 250 plus amps, at 200 plus inches per minute, and the heat at the tip is just so hot. When I was first learning, I used to have my hand right here at the end of the nozzle, and he'd come and smack my hand out of the way and say, "Get your hands out of the fire. You're going to burn 20 pairs of gloves before you know it."
Yeah.
And then you'd see these guys with huge blisters on their hand. So I was taught to hold the whip as low down as I could and try to be very feather-like, because, at the end of the day, if you have a death grip on that thing, man, you develop so much tension right here.
Carpal tunnel and all that. Yeah.
It hurts. It hurts. There's, those were things that I was taught at the beginning. Learn how to use your left hand, learn how to use your right hand, eat dinner with your left hand, to develop the other side of it. All these things I was learning and I was taking in. So excited about it back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. I didn't know of the places that I would be going to, or the places that I'd be able to work on, or people I'd meet through welding. But at the very beginning, I just thought it was not like addicting. It's just I wanted to do it again and again, where I was doing it. Even after an 8-hour day of laboring, I drive from San Diego, California to San Bernardino County and practice after an 8-hour day of work, and 2 or 3 nights a week. And I was just fascinated by it. And of course, the instructor would say, "Hey, it's looking really good, man." And of course that motivates you, and you're ready to bump it up a notch. So it was always about, taking it to the next level, and going at it. And it's still like that. I mean, I still have really great days, and sometimes it's not really great, but this long into it, it still can be fun.
Yeah. I get a blast. That's one thing that's one of the biggest things I like about teaching, is because I can jump from one process to the next. Yeah. So like if I'm doing, stick this week, I might be doing flux core next week, or aluminum MIG, the following, or jump into a little bit of TIG, so it's really cool. But like you were saying, with like running a longer gooseneck on that gun, like we've got like the standard gooseneck on ours, but it's got that heat shield built into the gun. But then I also have the students put the backing pads on a thick glove. Yeah. And that's their first comment. They'll run a bead and they'll be like, "Damn, that's hot." And I'm like, yeah, it's look at how many amps you're running on that 5/64 wire compared to what we were running 045 on the inside. Even though the wire feed speed's a little bit lower, you got a lot more amps coming through there, just because the diameter of that wire that's coming through. Yeah.
And that brings up another thing is I'd always get asked, "Well, why do you have a 500 on the rig?" And it's like, or the sarcastic comment is, "Can you get a bigger machine on the back of your truck?" And our comment was like, just let them say what they're going to say, because they're not out there with this. When we go from a different process of running 0.72 diameter, 5/64, and then switching over and then carbon arc gouging, we turn that dial to max and put in a 3/8 or 1/2 inch carbon rod, and just the machine just, and you can hear it bogging down. You'd never be able to, well, I can't say never. You could do it with a Bobcat, Trailblazer, or a Ranger, but you're going to get the lifespan on that machine is going to shrink, or it's going to diminish every time you try to carbon arc gouge with it.
Yeah, because you're damn near maxing it out every single time.
Oh yeah, it's a load. It's a load to put on, and I remember the first time I carbon arc gouged or had the opportunity. I didn't even want to try it. It just looked freaky. Fire spraying, the sound. It sounds like just tearing into it. And they said, "You want to give it a try?" I said, "No, I'll pass." And and then on my first job in that bridge, in the Bay Bridge, we were welding 1-inch stiffeners down to the base plate, and it was a full penetration weld. So we weld up one side, back gouge the other side, and then fill it back up. Except in the column, it's like if you were, how can I say it? Going down to the bottom of the column is like going through a sewer manhole cover, just a little bit smaller than that. And then what I had to do in there was lay down on my side and perform. And it was tough. So I had a fresh air oxygen mask, flip lens, and weld, gouge, weld, preheat. And we had to have a fire watch on top of us because we couldn't tell if we'd catch on fire or not. So that was my first job. And carbon arc gouging. And it was just, it was hard to describe back then to people what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's a little bit different, you know. A lot more people understand what's going on now.
Yeah, you got to give the so one of the supporters of the podcast, they make an electrode called Electra, and it's carbon arc gouging without the air. So I don't know what kind of black magic they put on the inside of the rod, but like we were trying it at the school, and at first I was like, nah, this is bullshit. It's snake oil. But you can actually gouge out without having the compressed air. So there's a lot less fume, a lot less, smoke and spatter and all that stuff. And it does a great job cutting it out. But then again, it doesn't leave the carbon deposits like carbon arc gouging does. So there's a lot less cleanup once you have to go back through and weld it out. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what's tricky about working with the carbon arc torch. It's when I was taught, when I first had it in my hand, it said, act like you're sweeping with a broom.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And of course I didn't have the end of the rod sticking out way too much forward. It had to have it in between, halfway in between the rod. And same thing with your hand position, not so close. And then you start clack, 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 and then it goes, and then you just go at it and you could start seeing the little separation of the welds. And that's what I started looking for. I would try to look for it in the first two hits, and then I would just brrr, and then just one straight sweep. And of course, it takes a lot of practice. But at the beginning, it would go clack, 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 and that's when you get those carbon deposits.
Mm-hmm.
So when you learn how to start off at the beginning and then just sweep it through with one pass, it comes out super clean and a nice straight gouge and very little carbon deposits.
And you can actually get pretty precise with that. Like we demo it all the time, but like when I was with the ironworkers, we had to do back gouging and stuff like that, or, doing weld repairs, you'd have to go back through and cut out a weld and stuff. And you can actually get down to the point where to the parent metal where you can see the original joint configuration, without digging too deep. I mean, you can take off just a little bit at a time, or you can dig in deep and cut out, a massive amount. So it's pretty cool, as archaic as that process is, how precise you can actually get with it.
Oh yeah. It's there's nothing too fancy with it other than high amperage and compressed air and the carbon rod. But another thing that helps is too, is they got those flat carbons, and depending on what you're gouging out, those help out a lot too. If you got to be real precise, after you start using them, they get pointy. So you learn how to twist a little bit and use the point to your advantage and tight spots. And all that comes with this, the more you use it,
Yeah, experience. So is that something that you guys put the apprentices on because it sucks doing it? Or is that something you want to do that because you're prepping your fit up in your joint and stuff?
Sometimes for me, myself, speaking for myself, I get a little worried sometimes because I don't want to throw them right on it right away.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's going to have to be tested. It's going to be inspected and tested. And the last thing I don't like to do is go back and fix somebody else's work. A lot of times it's 10 times harder to fix a weld than to start it off right from the beginning. So when we have an apprentice, we'll let them gouge out old metal and get the feel of it. So it's not so intimidating and not throw them on something so hardcore right off the bat. Or so finesseful, like if we're back gouging a backup bar or something like that, something where you get the feel of it. And of course, like anything else, you could see who's taking initiative with it, who's grasping the thought or the idea or the wanting to, and say, okay, that guy, let him do the gouging,
Mm.
And that's the part that it's tough, when we get apprentices or we get calls, my brother and I, we're well, first off, do you have this and this cert and that, and all that matters, but not just welding, because we do a lot of we got to do layout, and we got to read some plans, and we got to be good with the torch, and all that matters. So I try to emphasize on that as well, that if you have the opportunity to pick up an oxyacetylene torch or oxypropane or oxy, any type of gas torch, and practice, do it, because that's part of the trade.
Mm-hmm.
And every welder knows how valuable a good torchman is. If you can't do it yourself and you depend on the guy with the torch to make them bevels nice and the layout and the fit up, everything matters. Because, when you put the two metals together, whether it's beam or a pipe, if your cut is off, we've all had to fill up those gaps where we thought it was good here.
Yeah, you got to fight it.
Ends up with a huge gap. So, yeah, all that matters in the trade.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing is I hate fighting bad fit ups. Make sure it's right. And I tell people that all the time. Everybody gets so obsessed with the welding aspect of everything. They're like, oh, let's just, slam it together, weld it out. And it's like, no. Take your time. Get a good clean bevel that's uniform throughout the whole piece. Take your time and do it right. Because if you take your time during the prep work, the welds, that's going to be the cakewalk right there. But if you if you shit the bed on your prep work, you're going to fight it the whole way. Oh, yeah. Next thing you know, you're blowing through, and then you're back grinding and then cleaning everything out and trying to re-weld it. And it's a pain in the ass.
And then a lot of times you can't cut anymore. You can't re-bevel, or you can't square off the bad cut. Mm-hmm. You're forced to work, and sometimes an RFI has to be in it because the beam length is not long. There's all sorts of situations that can happen because of a bad fit up or layout.
Yeah.
And I always stress that out to the guys too, the kind of soapstone that you're using, how you're holding it, how you're laying out, how you're even holding the square. Everything matters. When we're out in the field, even if it's a fresh beam out of the mill and it's sitting out in the beam stack, you still gotta touch it. You gotta make sure there's not mill scale that's protruding, even a 16th. Some rust or arc strike or anything, because when you put your square on it and you do your layout for a beam splice, if that's kicking off your square, it's gonna throw everything off. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, that's with the new beam. But then still with the old beams, and they're covered in rust or they've been pulled out of the harbor, you got to prep back at least 4 or 5 feet where the splice is at, so you make sure you get a good, nice square cut. And it just evades having to fix or to do extra work, man.
Yeah.
The fit up matters. The fit up is the hard work. The welding can be it's like you said, the cherry on top.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned soapstone, because so many people overlook soapstone, and it's simple to do. But if you don't have a nice sharp point on your soapstone, and you rest that soapstone up against the tool that you're using, and I show people this all the time. I bevel my soapstone on one side so that the other side's completely flat. That way, when I put it up against a square, I put it up against a level as a straight edge or something like that, it just conforms to that shape, and you can take it all the way down, and it transfers that line correctly. Right. Whereas, if you sharpen it on both sides, your soapstone's a 1/4 inch thick, and you got a point right there in the middle, your line's already an 1/8 inch off if you put the body of that soapstone up against whatever you're working with.
Right,
So, you could throw yourself off an 1/8 of an inch right off the jump just because your soapstone, you're not holding your soapstone correctly.
You read the line wrong, and that when you got to put a beam together or a pipe, and your max tolerance is, let's say, they give you an 1/8 to maybe a 5/16 max, but if you read the line wrong and you cut on the opposite side of that line, oh man,
you're screwed now.
It's frustrating. Yeah. So I found a company out of Oregon called B&D Soapstone that makes where you don't have to sharpen no more, but you have to buy it, and it's just a medium soapstone. Well, that's what it's called, but medium soapstone. They have a thin and a medium, and then the regular. But that's all I run with now. B&D soapstone, or B&D soapstones out of Oregon, and I use the brass soapstone holder. You never have to sharpen it, and always makes that correct line.
Is that the 1/16 thick soapstone?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I use the same exact stuff, but I don't remember who makes it. I had to actually special order it through my distributor. So I went in there and I was like, "Hey, do you guys like sell a thin soapstone holder and soapstone?" They're like, "No, but we can get it for you." And I bought it, and damn, if I don't lose that thing all the time, man, that little joker's small, but it's so accurate. You don't have to sharpen it because I mean it's a 1/16 thick.
Right, and depending on whose hands it is, right? Because some guys are just always rough, you know, and there's some guys with a little bit more finesse. But I have a round soapstone holder, I have a scribe, I have the thin, and I have the medium soapstone holder, and they all have their own practical purpose. But my EDC soapstone holder is the brass medium, and then I carry a vintage tape measure right here for layout. You know, everything fits right here, and it's like every day on the job site, I got it in my pocket.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the Arc Junkies podcast is brought to you by AHP Welders. AHP makes great machines for a fraction of the cost. They carry a full line of stick, MIG, and TIG welders for those of you who want to get into welding at home. Whether you're learning in your garage, practicing at home, or you just want a welder for around the house for the weekend projects, check out ahpwelds.com and get a machine for under $1,000 without sacrificing performance. That's ahpwelds.com. We're also brought to you by Strong Hand Tools, makers of heavy-duty welding tables, toggle clamps, magnets, and fabrication tools. Strong Hand is a big supporter of education. If you're a welding student and you want to register your school for a free gift package, head on over to stronghandtools.com/arcjunkies to register, and Strong Hand will send your school a starter pack full of all kinds of goodies. Now let's get back into the show. Now with those thin ones too, they also make, and I don't know which company, I mean, you can probably Amazon it, but they make the same type of soapstone. I think the width is a little bit different, so it won't work in that same soapstone holder, but they make a silver streak version of a flat 1/16 soapstone.
Wow.
And then they make a Red Ryder version also. So like if you got a Red Ryder pencil or a silver streak pencil, like those are great for layout. You just run them through a pencil sharpener, but they make that in like a flat version. So it's probably 1/2 inch wide and a 1/16 thick. And, you know, so like if you're doing aluminum work, the Red Ryders work great. And like, you know, silver streak works really good on most materials, you know, especially like if it's got like a dark color to it, you know, mill scale before you take the mill scale off, it works great.
Right. I've had the silver streaks, and I still carry one with the lead holder style pencil. So that I still use that occasionally, and I'll use the scribes. But where I'm at most of the time, it's this thin soapstone. Unless I'm doing light gauge, and I'll carry a Sharpie for small layout. When I do light gauge, it's not a lot of laying out. It's just for cutting square lines and stuff.
Have you seen the new Sharpies, or not Sharpies, the Milwaukee Inksol? They make a ultra fine point.
And then on the opposite side, it has a regular tip.
No, it's just so they make the regular fine point, but then they have an ultra fine point. The only place I can find them is on Amazon. But yeah, it's an ultra fine point, kind of like the Sharpie with the ultra fine point. But the Inksol from Milwaukee, they seem to last a lot longer, and they're a lot more durable than the Sharpies. They don't dry out as fast.
I have to check that out, because I do have a Sharpie that has a regular point and then the fine point on the opposite end in one marker. Yeah.
It's like that, but it's just the ultra fine point, and it's only on a single end. But I can never find them at Home Depot. I had to go on. I heard about, somebody had mentioned it in one of the videos we did. Somebody had mentioned, oh yeah, they make those in a Inksol version, and I couldn't find it anywhere. I thought it was a myth. And I got on Amazon, and I think I bought like 2 8-packs, and they're freaking, that's all I use here at the house now. And then I'll take some to work with me. And, you know, like Sharpies, for some reason, I don't know, they have a bad habit of disappearing. So I think I'm due to buy some more.
Yeah. And it's always one of those tools is an essential thing out there too.
Yeah. I mean, every day you got to show up to the job, regardless of what you're doing, whether it's ironwork, pipeline, you know, pile driving, whatever, you need to have something to write with and a tape measure.
You got to have it,
I mean, it's like second nature. You get out of the truck, you put your tape measure on, you got soapstone in your pocket. Hell, I got more soapstone on top of my dresser than I know what to do with, because it always ends up in the friggin' washer and dryer and shit. But
yeah, that's that old joke, right? You always have clean pockets because of all the soapstone left in them in the wash. But yeah, it's true. It's one of my things that's always in like my, I guess I would call it my fast bag. Like in my regular bag, I'd have a chip and hammer, wire and brush, a flathead and a Phillips, a pair of side cutters, Klein number 9s, tape measure and a square, and that'll get me through most days, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Unless I got to go and do carbonate gouging and all that stuff. But for the most part, that's my fast pack right there.
Right. Now, in addition to all the welding and stuff that you do, you also do leather work. And I found you through a mutual acquaintance. So Matt Arnold had posted one day these welder-made headbands. And I was like, that's freaking slick, because like the ones that come in a standard welding hood, they're like that foam junk.
That black foam stuff.
Yeah, that black foam that just kind of wraps around twice, and it's just shit. It's not comfortable, and it absorbs a lot of gunk and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I seen Matt posted these, welder-made headbands, like custom fit for your hood. And that's when I reached out to you and got a set of those in the lime green, because I'm like a lime green and black dork, and I have been for years. But I also want to talk about, in addition to your welding experience, the type of leather work that you do. So how did you get into, like, how do you go from pile driving and iron work and stuff to working with small leather? Because like the attention to detail, the fine cuts, the accuracy, you wouldn't think iron worker, pile driver. You would think somebody with like dainty hands is building this stuff, just because of the accuracy and detail you put into it.
Well, it's funny that you say it like that, because there's some guys out there that would probably say that about my that I'm OCD or super picky when it comes to stuff like, well, when I'm doing my layout or telling people how to put a regulator on, and I tell them, they'll tell me like, hey, where's the gauges at? And I said, what gauges are you talking about? Are you talking about the regulator? So I try to correct them all the time on stuff like that, because it's not gauges, it's a regulator, and the gauges sit on top.
Mm-hmm.
But all the work and all the transferring of lines out here when we're working on the highways, we have to wear the fiber metal hard hat. And that's what we wear most of the time under, for 20 years, I've worn the fiber metal tire hood with the fiber metal hard hat, and it's hot and it's sweaty. And so we'd run a bandana. Even if you have a welder's cap, it still ends up sliding down like this on you. And so it's just always a headache worrying about your hood sliding down, or you're about to strike an arc and you flip your hood down,
falls
and
off,
then the thing comes off, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh. And well, leather, and this is another thing, I don't like to call myself like a leather worker like some of these professional guys. I mean, they're beautiful work. I like to call myself more crafty than a leather worker. But what I use at work, as far as like cuts and dimensions, I transfer that into doing leather. It's different because leather it's not rigid like steel. When I lay it down on my cutting mat, I have to kind of let it unroll and let it relax a little bit, and then I'll do my cut. Because if I try to pull it or stretch it a certain way, like when I was first started making my headbands, it comes out with a crooked cut. And so, that's how, when I first started making these, I just would cut it with whatever I had. A pocket knife or the sharpest scissors I had around the house. And, when I first started making them, they weren't so nice. It was just leather wrapped around the inner part of the hard hat. And, super glue is something I always had in the truck also. And so, I just fold over the leather and glue it on. And that's kind of some stuff that I would hand out to the guys. I'd say, here's a piece of leather, try it out and put it on. And I'd put it on for them. And that's back in 2013, 2014. And I just always had envisioned this idea of making a really nice one, taking the time to do it. And it just takes time, when you're working full time and everything else, it's just something that you kind of just keep putting off to the side, like a project. But it's working out here in the field. Getting to the job site, waking up, 3 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, driving and coming home after, being scrutinized by inspection all day long. Working with leather was a way for me to kind of wind down. And I always wanted to make stuff that involved what I'm going to need it for the next day. And I would work on making these little cuts to have in my console, my work truck ready. But other than that, I would have these little pieces, and I would make coin pouches for family members. So we'd have friends come over, and I'd hand stitch them a little coin pouch together, put a snap on it, and I had a wood burner, and I'd draw a little flower on it, and it was just neat. It'd distract the kids for a minute and tell them, hey, you could do something like this, and then of course they loved having a real soft premium piece of leather coin bag. And watching me make it, special. And so that's how it started coming out to be at the very beginning. And well, now it's totally different. Everything that I put into the headbands that I make came from stuff that I had here at my house. I didn't like say, this is what I'm going to need. This is exactly what I need. It took work to find the right padding. It took work to find the right adhesives, to find a hand press that was going to work and I could be productive with it rather than using a little hammer and anvil. When I first started making the headbands with padding, it used to take me an hour to build one set for a fiber metal hard hat. And that was cutting it off the hide and installing the little snaps with the hammer and the anvil, using the scissors and cutting it. And I was using a little piece of plastic this long so I wouldn't damage the table. And so, yeah, I'd have 4 sets and I'd take them out there and the guys would be like, wow, these are nice. And that's how it started evolving. The feedback started coming in and guys were just, people out there were just so excited about a leather. And it made their day go better. And just to hear that they did and liked them that much was inspiring. And so I wanted to make them even better. And so, yeah, so they're still evolving still, the first sets of headbands that I made were for the hard hats, of course, that I've used in the past in my career out here. I've always had an MSA, the ball cap style, and
MSA skull guard, yeah.
Yeah, the MSA skull guard, and then a fiber metal hard hats, the plastic ones, and then the P2 roughneck, and so that's what I've always ran with. So those were my go-to. I got to make headbands for these because that's what people are wearing out here. And so that's what I did. I made my patterns, and I just started making more of them. Yeah, and so after I got a little bit of feedback from some of the guys at work, one of my first transactions that this guy was so happy. He goes, well, let me give you something. He gave me $10 and a bag of grapefruit, and I was excited about it because, well, I love the citrus fruits, but his ruby red grapefruits are they're legendary, and I still go and pick them up from his place here and there, and we always tell the story. But it's nice, It's a nice thing to be complimented for something that makes somebody's day go really nice or better,
Yeah, I gotta say it's a quality product because, like I said, I reached out to you and I was like, hey, I wanted to get because I seen the one that had spikes on it, and I was like, and then you said something like custom colors are available, so that's when I reached out and I was like, hey, I got this new Speed Glass G502 that I want. Like, I'm not a huge fan. I mean, the hood is freaking great. I think the headgear could use some work. Definitely, it's definitely meant for somebody that's in the shop, but I wanted something better, as far as like the headgear, or at least make the headgear that it has better. And, that's when I reached out to you and I was like, hey, do you think you can build a set for this? And you were like, oh yeah, no problem. What color do you want? Da-da-da-da-da. And then like, you were kind of like teasing me with the pictures and stuff. And I was like so stoked about getting them. And then I finally got them and put them on. And now I'm getting like compliments on the hood. Like people are like, oh, that's badass. Like, where'd you get those? Like, so I've been referring people to you. But then you're also making me a set for, I got a Lincoln 3350 that I want to put a set on as well.
Yeah.
And if I was still out doing iron work, I would definitely be getting one for my skull guard.
Yeah.
But I like them. I mean, they're cool. I mean, it's a nice accessory, but it's a functional accessory, and it's comfortable. You know, I don't know what you're putting in there for padding, but it's a nice fit and a nice comfort level to it. And unlike the cheap shit that, you know, it's like everybody wants to use like a sponge or some kind of padding. I don't know what you put in there. You don't have to give away a trade secret, but it's really comfortable. Yeah,
you know, it that's the stuff that came through the trial and error. The ones that I do most of the time, it came through trial and error because I used to always use the woolly pads.
Yep.
And you know, the one in the back with the hole already cut in it, and then they fold up on top of your headgear and you snap. They last. If you're brave, you'll use it more than 4 months because it stinks something fierce when you.
It smells like the damn sheet they cut it off of.
and then they rust together, the snaps. So you'd have to always remember to put in a couple drips of oil on the snaps before you would put that headband on. And so that's what I'd always run with. But other than that, I don't know which company, but they make a pigskin one and it has a light padding in it. That's what I used to go for when the shops had them. Mm-hmm. And of course, I never had them. So when I started making mine, I started putting listings on eBay. April 2019, I think, is when I don't even remember. It's April 19, 2020 or April 2019 is when I first started putting up listings for fiber metal headbands on eBay under my seller name. And, you know, I'd sell like 1 or 2 a week, and I thought that was nice. You know, I was like, hey, somebody likes them. And then they'd send feedback and said, hey, man, your headbands are awesome. I'm telling all the guys at work, I'm like, wow, they really like them. You know, and then this other guy says, I absolutely love your headbands. I wish it was a little bit longer on the sides and an inch longer on each side. So I was like, oh, okay. But the first ones that I was making were avoiding the attachment from the hard hat to the headgear. So they were narrower. So I got my wife's clothing tape measure, the ones that are flexible. Mm-hmm. And I started doing some layout in the hard hat that I have. And within half an hour, I have the cut that I still use today for fiber metal and for MSA. And I cut it out on a pattern and I put it on my folder and it's right there, you know. I don't even have to use my pattern somewhere. I got it all dialed in by memory when I cut. But back then, I was laying my patterns on top of the hide and cutting it with my knives. Mm-hmm. And so, once I put that listing up on eBay with the right cuts, then it started going to about 2 or 3 a week. And I was so stoked, you know, because the feedback, it's so motivating when they're like, dude, you don't even know, you know, and it's like, well, I do know because I'm still out there. I still wear my hard hat. I know how much of a difference a simple tool like a headband makes, especially, you know, because I've been there. I've been down in the trench. I've been in the mud. I've been in the shoring hole. I've been up on the pile driving leads. I've been up there greasing the hammer. I've been up there greasing the boom tip. I've been walking off the side of the bridge on the safety ladders. I've been on that, and it's just when you're comfortable, it's like your boots. When your boots are comfortable, the day's not so hard. Mm-hmm. When you put on a hard hat and it's got premium leather in it, it's a game changer. Everybody tells me it's a game changer, you know, and that's why it's been a blessing. I can't say nothing else than it's a God-given idea. Prayed a lot about it, and it's been a blessing. I get so excited to see where they're at or where they're going or who's made an order and you know, I see the pictures with people wearing the headbands on their hard hat or on the welding hood, and then they have, you know, the bent tests next to them and all. I'm like, wow, it's so inspiring because I just, it brings like 100 flashbacks into my memory process, like fast, you know, and it's just an amazing feeling. to say the least, to say the least. And I'm having a great time with them. It's fun. It's fun.
Now, do you make them for like all makes and models of hoods and hard hats, or is there like a specific set that you typically do, or can you do like custom ones? I mean, how's all that work?
Yeah, it's for fiber metal hard hats. It's a certain cut. For MSA hard hat, MSA runs like the Fast Track 1, the original headgear, the Fast Track 2 and 3. So they require a different sort of a cut. The new lift hard hats have a different cut. Serious composites have a different cut. Bullard hard hats, they all require a different cut. So my headbands are not multi-fit. Even though they might work on another, it takes the comfort level away from being a custom set.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I like to say or specialize in. What if somebody sends me a DM or a message on Etsy and they say, does this hard fit my Jackson headgear? And I'll say, well, the front and the top, but the backside, it's a different cut. And it's normally in the backside where it's always different. And so I've had to get creative with the backside on the headbands, typically. So,
okay.
Yeah. But the fiber metal headgear is what I like to specialize in, with the spikes. And I came out with the top side mainly because there's always been that time where I myself have been in the field and you're resting the top of your head. If you don't have a hard hat on, you're resting the top of your head on something sometimes. And the top buckle on the top of your head will start pushing down on your head and it bothers you.
Mm-hmm.
So that top pad, other than looking pretty cool, it actually helps you when you're pushing up or resting your head against something. Okay. A lot of time you're using the top of your head just for balancing in a tight spot. So it's got to be functional, and that's why I like to put comfort, function, and style.
Mm-hmm. No, I do like the spikes that are on there. I think that's a nice touch.
Yeah, that was something that, I told my wife, I was sitting right over here, and I said, and I have this jacket. I've been a POD fan, Pitbull and Death is a rock band out of Chula Vista, San Diego. I've been a fan of theirs since 2001. My wife, right when my son was born, they got me this windbreaker, and it has an image on it, and it has an image of Jesus on it, and it has a crown of thorns, and then at the bottom it says "Testify," and it was always like a shocker sort of a jacket to wear out in public, because I'd either get compliments or like somebody like a fist bump or something would happen out of it, but it was a chance for me to give a quick chance to testify. And then I remember that, and I go, I'm going to put some spikes on these headbands, and then my wife says, I don't know, I don't think they're going to like it. And I said, well, we'll see it. We'll see. And so, yeah, I put it on, and I still have my first headband in the garage, the first headband I did with spikes. And yeah, it's neat,
Did they sell pretty good?
Yeah, I get requests for them a lot. Some people's, if I put up a listing with spikes already on, they're sometimes the first to go. But I don't put them on all the time unless if somebody asks for them, I'll say spikes are optional, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's a solid product, dude. I freaking love it.
Yeah. It's just cool. It's just a piece of leather. It's not new technology. It's not nothing. It's just something that helps you out more than most people can imagine. It's just the time, the thought of when I started making the cuts. You could only get this type of understanding if you would wear it all day long. You know, if you wear hard hats all day long or your welding hood, it gets heavy. Otherwise, companies wouldn't be trying to make such a light welding hood or such such a welding hood with such amazing vision. Everything matters when you're wearing a hard hat or a welding hood. You know, like now they got carbon fiber hard hats, and they're super light, and they got all the ANSI ratings. But you know, I just want to say thanks to everybody in the welding community, because I never was able to even think about ever having something like this. And you know, it's the best hard hat I've had in 20 years. You know, those carbon fiber things, they're beautiful. And you know, I use my own stuff in it all the time out there.
Now you're holding up the carbon fiber hood, or the carbon fiber hard hat.
Yeah.
But like I gotta say, like that's a supervisor hat. It's got the wide brim on there. That was like a big thing with ironwork. Like you get an apprentice that shows up with one of like a wide brim hat. You'd be like, "Oh, you're the boss man, huh?" We would ride his ass like a rented mule all day.
Yeah, you know, I get to wear that today when we're checking out work, checking out what's going on, or measuring or doing a walkthrough. I'll get to wear it. Or if I'm I'm out there working and I'm doing torch work and layout, I put my full brim on.
Yeah.
And
so for those that aren't catching on, like if you're in welding school, if you're an apprentice, if you're getting ready to go out on your first job, do not buy a wide brim hard hat.
No, yeah.
And do not buy a white hard hat, because you're gonna get your ass ridden all friggin' day. Like go get the baseball cap style, either MSA or the carbon fiber or the new lift the new lift hard hats. Yeah. Get something like the baseball style with a single brim on the back. And there's even some job sites you can only wear the brim backwards if you're an iron worker, because you have to attach your hood that way. You can't attach your hood with the brim to the front.
Yeah, that's been something that I learned, you know, with making these headbands. I'd get requests. I remember the first time I got a request for a swing set headgear. And I said, "What's a swing set?" And so that's headgear where the actual adjustment knob can swing forward or backwards, so you can turn your hard hat with the brim forward and then turn it backwards when you put your hood on.
Okay.
And there's one for MSA, and Fiber Metal makes one also. And I bought one just to try it out and to make headbands for it, because I got so many requests for them. And my honest opinion is I don't like the way they feel too much. I mean, they're effective because for safety reasons, when safety walks out and says, "Hey, you got to turn your bill forward," you know, you take off your hard hat, swing it, and put it back on, and you're ready to roll. But you know, yeah, it's always another a new one coming out. You know, I've made headbands for Stihl, the guys that make chainsaws.
Yeah. With their the hard hat with the face shield built into it and everything for chainsaw work.
Right, and the earmuffs and all that. A guy reached out on eBay to me, and he sent me some really fuzzy pictures with some measurements, and I got it down and I shipped them back out to him, and they fit. He said he loved them. He said, "Unbelievable," and it feels great, you know. I made one for Klein hard hat, the new Klein hard hats that came out. And you know, I'm working on other things too, other types of helmets, other things. You know, I try to get creative with it, and I'll try to use it before I say just, you know, here it is. You know, it's always been my own testing with them before they've, you know, been put out there.
Right, because you put a lot of work into it. Like even when I asked you for the ones that I wanted, I mean, you took a little bit and I appreciate that, because you took some time to make sure you got exactly what I was looking for, because the color scheme that I was looking for is kind of hard to find.
Yeah, the Forney green.
And then like, you know, the type of leather that you went with.
Yeah, that all makes a difference. The the first hide that I bought was, I bought this hide not knowing much about it, because the research that I did was, I thought most leathers were equal, but they're not. You know, there's all sorts of tanning processes. There's thicknesses in the weight of the hides. But the first hide that I bought was a royal blue elk hide. And then once I had it in my hands, I just wanted to walk around holding it all over the place, because it was the nicest piece of leather I'd ever held, you know. And it felt like I don't know how to say it, like butter, you know, like a big piece of butter in my arms, and I'd lay it like this, and it's like king, like something a king would have or something. No, it's unbelievable. So when I started cutting this, and I started cutting them, put it on a hard hat, the guy's face would just be like, they'd be like, and they would just light up, you know. It's the same look, you know. It's like, oh my gosh. And if there's just some cursing sometimes, and there's jumping around, smiles, that's the amazing feeling, you know. But that elk hide, after I used it, after a while, I knew it wasn't something that I was going to keep going with. Even though it's real nice, I still get it occasionally, but it's not my go-to hide. And for certain reasons, but like you said, you would have to know if, you know, if you're like me, where I've used a whole different sorts of versions of different types of leathers already.
Yeah, because you've done like a lot of personal research and development, trying to develop, you know, like the perfect formulation for what you've got as far as like comfort, fit, style, and, you know, effectiveness for, you know, what its intended use is. You know, you want something that's not going to fail. You want something that's going to be durable, and not all animal hides are created equal.
No, they're not. And I generally want it to last long for whoever's using it, because I could raise the price. I could do so many things. I can make it all about, you know, money, but I'm not like that. I really want it to who's ever wearing it to understand the importance of them. And I hope they understand that. You know, I remember when I was writing the story on my Etsy page, you know, I hope that they grasp the importance of them. You know what I mean? And that's why all this trial and error with these different hides came to be. I get requests for certain types. And I try to do my best for all the support that I've gotten from my customers. And that's something my dad taught me. He says, you know, you don't walk away from bad work. You don't do bad things. You gotta do good. And that's what I strive for. That's what I strive for with these headbands.
Yeah. And that's the best way to do it, you know. And you take a lot of, you can see the pride and the effort and the passion that you take on it, because like even when we were chatting back and forth, you were like, oh, I'm using this type of material because of this, that, and the other, and like it kind of explaining the process. So I mean, you're passionate about it, just like you're passionate about the work that you do in the field, because you've been in the field for, you know, a long time. You know, I mean, we're knocking on 30 years here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're taking the same pride and passion with, you know, the leather work that you are with, you know, what you've done with welding.
Yeah, the thing is, and to put it in a nutshell, is I really genuinely care. I care. I'm not doing it. I'm so grateful for the blessings as far as what I've been able to receive in forms of payments for them, you know, but I've also given out headbands to lots of people. We're out there in the field, and there's these guys. Sometimes I've had 1, 2, 3, sometimes I've had 15 guys line up at my truck for a set of headbands. And sometimes there's a guy who says, hey man, I got 18. I said, here. And I don't do it all the time, but you know, here it is, man, just take it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to say, oh no way, don't even think about it, you know? Or I'll say, just bring me a Gatorade whenever you have a chance, you know? And, you know, because I'm a brother out there in the field. And we know how important it is sometimes to have that camaraderie, man. You bring somebody a bottle of water, you bring somebody, you know, a Gatorade or a breakfast burrito or a breakfast sandwich, whatever it is, man, it turns it into another level as far as brotherhood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's important.
Especially a California burrito. The California breakfast burrito, you guys got that shit on lockdown, dude. Sam, the cooking guy, made one of those for me. That's the best I've ever had. I came back and I probably cooked California breakfast burritos for like 15 weeks. My kids, my wife, they were getting sick of it. Every Saturday, man, I'm out there on the flat iron, just cooking it up.
Yeah, that's what it is, man. I mean, that's camaraderie that we have out here, and that's where I'm from. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the guys noticed that with this. I've had a blast. You know, I've had a blast. I've had huge support from the welding community since I started last year in October, and it's been growing little by little, coming up on 3K, and I got something that I'm going to be doing right here. Some of the people know already what's in store for the 3K, but I'll be doing a post pretty soon about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like, you're the originator of these specific types of headbands.
This is what I say. I'm not the inventor of the headband.
Right.
Because there's 100 different sorts of it, you know, per se. But I like to claim that I'm the original creator of the custom fit headband with premium leather for hard hats and welding hoods, because before you started seeing my stuff, it was just what you could find at the welding shop. I'm sure there might have been other people out there making something, but not with my specific material and my cuts and my snaps and all that stuff. And so, you know, that was why I started an Instagram, you know, to let it be known for the people in the trades where my product originated from, because eventually, you know, it's leather, but you'd hope to think that people are going to respect your craft or what you're doing and say, I'm gonna, you know, that's this guy's deal, you know, leave it. But some people, unfortunately, don't think like that. They're full of greed, you know, and they want to take your stuff. And that's why I started Instagram, because unfortunately that is happening to me. And so even still, my dad would tell me before he passed, he says, "You're doing a good job, boy." And he would tell me in Spanish, you know, he would say, "La aguilita ya ha ido todo alrededor del mundo," which means the little eagle has been all around the world now. And I go, "Yeah, Pa, that's true. That little eagle right here comes from my dad's tattoo." And, you know, that means the eagle is a powerful symbol in our culture, in our country, and a lot of people's thoughts and beliefs. And I mean, when I got my first tattoo right here, you know, I was thinking about my dad. And that eagle runs deep in our family, you know. So my nephews, my brothers, we carry that eagle thinking about my dad and what he taught us, what he inspired us to be: hardworking man, respectable, honorable, and it was always something that he would say, you know, do something good, do something for yourselves, you know. And he'd emphasize on that, you know, have fun when you work. It shouldn't be a burden. And I'll you know, when I see the stickers out there, he loved to see him. He loved to see him. I'd show him pictures on the page, and he would get a big smile, you know, and it's him. Mm-hmm. My mom loved to see it, you know. My mom, she says, you know, but she loved to see it too. And they were both such huge inspirations for me when I was making these. They never let what was going on bother me. They'd always re-inspire me. Even as a 40-year-old man, you know, I still feel like I need my parents so much, and I miss them. I miss them so much, but they're in every set that I put, I tell people every set that goes out, I think about where they're going to go. I think about who's going to be using it, and I hope that they last them I hope they last them as long as good. If they can get 2 years out of that, good.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to last. So
yeah, I mean, they're quality. I don't anticipate the set that you sent me, going out anytime soon.
Yeah, I think for the average, I've come across some guys that like really heavy sweaters, and just super rough, and they've had, they've got a year use out of it already. I got some pictures where the leather's worn down. We can see the padding through, and he says they still feel great, but I want a new pair. Mm-hmm. And some guys will have, or some people will have 2 or 3 sets just to have.
And that's nice that they're like coming back. They're like, hey, I want another set because money well spent, right?
Yeah, that's another huge compliment that I've received, as, best money I've ever invested. And that's, that it's awesome. It's awesome. It feels good to know that, and like I said, if I as the time goes on, I want to be more active with the community as much as I can. The way everything's going right now, I'm so grateful for it. I want to be more involved with the academies, with the students, and giveaways. Whatever I can give back, I want to give back, and it's just amazing support that I've received this far since last year with Instagram and the welding community. A lot of great people.
So, like, if somebody's interested, how can they, where can they follow you? Where can they get your headbands?
Well, the easiest way is right now I'm only on Instagram at Welder Made Headbands, and the link is in my bio to the Etsy shop. And in the future, I'll be making a website, something more dedicated. It's the amount of time that it gets tough sometimes. Being a full-time at work and then father and everything else, it's a time crunch sometimes. And so if I have, 2 or 3 hours here, I'll jump on and do a bunch of cuts. So I'm working on a way to get more produced, to have the store stock with more options most of the time and have that set. But when somebody sends me a message, I try to get it done within the week, and I try to get them out as quick as I can, because as a customer myself for all sorts of other things that I appreciate a quick service and a genuine care about it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, if there's questions about a specific hard hat, just send me a message. They can see a simple question like, can you make a set for a Series composite hard hat? And then I'll respond with what color options I'll have available, and I try to make it smooth.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't want it to be where it says multi-fit, because that's not.
It's not the same. You get something. I mean, like I've done the same thing. Went into the welding supply store and I bought what they had because it's a universal fit. That's what they have, and it doesn't fit right. It doesn't function right. The hood's loose. Sitting on top of your head, and it's just not the same. I mean, like what you sent me is like an exact carbon copy of what I needed for my welding hood.
Yeah, thanks. It's just it's like I said, because I care. If I was putting them out at $1, I'd still be putting them in the same effort for it, and I'm gonna keep doing it like that till I physically can't. Every so often I like to do a couple other things here and there. Like I'll make a rod holder, or, you know, pouches and stuff like that. Just random things I can make here and there. But the headbands is what well, it's what I like to say. I'm specializing with that, you know. Mm-hmm. And I've received compliments of some people who matter in the community saying, like, you know, the best headbands in the industry, and that makes me feel like I'm floating on air, you know. And it really inspires me to keep doing more and to keep looking for the best that I could put out in a headband.
Yeah. Because I mean, there's knockoffs out there that you can buy that are like trying to imitate your product and stuff, and it's not the same type of quality and passion that's put into the headbands that you're producing. Like, I mean, you've been there, you've been in the trenches, you've been up there on the girders, you know what's needed, and that's passion, devotion has been put into your product. Yeah,
and I've got the scars to prove it, you know. And they're just trying. They're all about marketing, mm-hmm. and that's what people see a lot, you know. Actors standing in front of construction sites, brand new shiny hard hats and fancy photography, and it's all good in certain companies. If you're a legitimate person, I've told people, do some research when you spend your money sometimes, because there's people out there that are false or fraudulent, and it's a sad story. Like I said, it's happening to me with mine. Mm-hmm. It makes me very angry, to say the least.
Yeah.
Because of where it came from my products, from my house, from my thoughts, from my prayers, from the asking, from the hoping, you know, from the feedback. I mean, some of these guys that I've had a chance, you know, when I'm on the field, you know, it'll be a lunch break my eyes are magnetized to the headband section. You know, sometimes you could see something coming through. I've seen the vinyl stuff hanging off the side right here and the stock stuff. And I said, hey brother, I got a set of headbands that'll make your hard hat feel like $1 million. And they're like, really? And so I'll get it, and I carry a bag of wipes, and I'll cut off all that old stuff. I'll wipe it down and pretty much give the hard hat a bath.
Yeah.
They're like, wow, I can't wait. You know, they're like this.
Like full service.
Yeah. Yeah. They're like, oh, I can't wait. And they say, what's it going to feel like? And I said, it's going to feel like you're about to sit in a Ferrari. And they put it on, and I've seen guys drive off with their hard hat on, you know, just smiling ear to ear.
Nice.
And that's just an amazing feeling.
Yeah, because I mean, you think about it. I mean, if you're whatever the amount of time that you're working that shift, whether it's 8-hour day, 10-hour day, 12-hour day, 16, whatever, you got to have the hard hat on. Like if you don't have it on, you're out of there. And the last thing you want is something that's not. It's like you said, like a pair of boots. You know, if you put on a shitty pair of boots and you walk out to work for a 16-hour shift, you're in for a world of hurt. You know, and you're gonna be paying for it for the next couple of days.
Yep.
You know, same thing with a hard hat. If the hard hat's not comfortable, it's something you got to wear every day. Same thing, like safety glasses, like all your PPE, a harness. You know, like I've seen those people that go out and get the harness, you know, like the $95 special in a 5-gallon bucket. You get a harness and a bucket with it.
Yeah.
That bucket so you can throw the fucking harness away when you're done with it, because it's shit, right? Like go out and like buy some decent gear. I mean, especially if you got to wear it for that amount of time, you know?
Especially if you got to wear it, you know, there's no sense in torturing yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what I want people in the trades to see. You know, I'm legit, and I'm still out there. I'm still waking up. I'm still shifting gears. You know, I'm still rolling up lead, and I'm still doing it. And I'll still, you know, whatever happens in the future, I've got welding in my blood forever. Mm-hmm. And there's days that I still get this huge kick out of it. You know, everything's flowing right, and it just, you know, you feel like elated. You know what I mean? Everything's just rolling right, and it's a beautiful day. and it's just great. It's awesome to see the people wearing them also. Mm-hmm. I can't emphasize it also on that, how awesome it feels to see people using them at work, you know, and from a picture, I can, as a welder myself, I can feel myself, you know, holding the stinger, holding the whip, or whatever they're doing. I'm like, you know, when I watch the videos, like on YouTube, it's just, I can feel myself actually there, you know, because we see it, you know, we see it and we live it. We smell the rods burning and everything. And it's just really cool to see it. Yeah.
I mean, you got a passion for it, man. So if you guys are out there, if you're looking for, you know, a decent set of headbands for your welding hood, your hard hat, whatever, go ahead and hit up WelderMade on or WelderMade Headbands, WelderMade Headbands on Instagram. Check out his Etsy shop. He makes some really cool quality products.
For sure.
David, it's been great having you on the podcast, hearing your story, talking a little bit about you know, flux core welding, pile driving, ironwork. That's where my heart lies. And then, you know, something that you're able to build and produce and give back to the trades.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Jason, for your time, for letting me share my story here on your podcast. And it's something that I won't never forget.
Anytime, man.
100%.
I appreciate you. All right, ladies and gents, that is all I have for you this week. Don't forget to check out WelderMade Headbands on Instagram and order yourself a set of headbands for your hard hat or your welding hood. Thank you all so much for the downloads and the support. I truly appreciate it. Don't forget to check out the website if you want to order any show hats, shirts, or hoodies. I hope you all have a great, safe, productive week. And until next time, make every weld better than your last.